1792 BC, a time of war, chaos, and endless struggle. But from the shadows of a minor city-state, one man would rise to forge an empire that would reshape history forever. His name? Hammurabi, the warrior king who built Babylon. Before Hammurabi, Babylon was just another small kingdom, overshadowed by the mighty cities of Ur, Nineveh, and Akkad. Mesopotamia was a battlefield of warring states, each ruler vying for dominance. But Hammurabi had a vision to unite them under one rule. When Hammurabi inherited the throne, Babylon was weak and surrounded by powerful rivals. He knew that brute force alone wouldn't be enough. Instead, he needed strategy, alliances, and, above all, patience. Rather than launching immediate attacks, Hammurabi played the long game. He signed treaties, formed strategic alliances, and bided his time, observing his enemies, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Then his chance arrived. The powerful city of Larsa controlled vital trade routes and stood in Hammurabi's way. But its king, Rimsin, had grown complacent. It was time for Babylon to rise. Instead of a direct assault, Hammurabi used siege warfare. He cut off Larsa's supplies, isolating the city and starving its army. After months of desperation, Larsa fell. Babylon had won its first major victory. Next, he set his sights on Mari, a wealthy city-state ruled by Zimri-Lim. Mari had vast resources, and Hammurabi knew that controlling it would solidify Babylon's dominance. In 1761 BC, Mari fell. Hammurabi was no longer just a king, he was becoming an emperor. His next move, eliminating his final rivals. The remaining kingdoms saw Babylon's rise as a threat. Assyria, Elam, and Ashnuna formed a coalition to stop Hammurabi. It was now or never. Babylon had to strike first. Hammurabi attacked with full force. His army smashed through enemy defenses, leaving nothing but ashes in its wake. By 1757 BC, the war was over. Babylon ruled Mesopotamia. With his enemies defeated, Hammurabi turned inward. He knew that conquering lands was one thing, but keeping them united was another. That's when he made his greatest contribution to history. To bring order to his empire, Hammurabi created the first written legal code, the Code of Hammurabi, a set of 282 laws engraved on a massive stone pillar, covering everything from trade and contracts to marriage, crime, and justice. Justice in Babylon was brutal. If a house collapsed and killed someone, the builder was executed. If a merchant sold fake goods, death. If a son struck his father, his hand was cut off. Hammurabi's most famous law? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. It ensured that punishment fit the crime, preventing endless cycles of revenge. By the end of his reign, Hammurabi knew Babylon's enemies would return. He focused on fortifying the city, ensuring its defenses could withstand future attacks. In 1750 BC, Hammurabi died. His son, Samsu-iluna, took the throne, but he lacked his father's skill. The empire began to weaken. The regions that Hammurabi had conquered, Larsa, Mari, and Ashnuna, had never truly accepted Babylonian rule. They had submitted to Hammurabi's strength, but the moment that strength faded, rebellion erupted. One by one, the cities broke away. The empire his father had spent a lifetime building was slipping through Samsu-iluna's fingers. But Babylon's greatest threat didn't come from within, it came from the outside. The Kassites, a mysterious warrior people from the Zagros Mountains, saw Babylon's weakness and prepared to strike. At first, Samsu-iluna fought back. He sent his armies to crush the rebellions and hold the borders. But his forces were stretched too thin. As he fought on multiple fronts, another enemy appeared, the Sealand dynasty, a powerful group from the marshlands of southern Mesopotamia. With Babylon distracted, the Sealand rulers seized key territories in the south, cutting off vital trade routes. The empire was bleeding out. For decades, Babylon struggled to hold itself together. Hammurabi had built an empire through war, strategy, and law, but his successors couldn't maintain it. The kingdom shrank, its power faded, and its enemies grew stronger. Hammurabi's death marked the beginning of Babylon's slow decline, but his influence would endure for millennia. His laws, strategies, and vision had transformed a small city-state into a powerful empire, but the real challenge was maintaining what he had built. His successors would struggle to hold on to power, facing rebellions, invasions, and internal corruption. Samsu-iluna, Hammurabi's son, inherited the throne but lacked his father's military genius and political foresight. He immediately faced revolts from the cities his father had conquered, including Larsa, Eshnunna, and Mari. These regions had never truly accepted Babylonian rule. They had only submitted out of fear of Hammurabi's might. The moment his iron grip loosened, they seized their chance to break free. The most serious rebellion came from the Sealand dynasty, a powerful faction that emerged in the marshlands of southern Mesopotamia. These warriors took control of key trade routes, cutting Babylon off from the wealth of the Persian Gulf. Samsu-Iluna sent armies to reclaim the lost territories, but his efforts failed. The Sealand rulers became an independent force, permanently dividing the empire. As internal struggles weakened Babylon, new threats emerged from the north. The Kassites, a fierce and mysterious people from the Zagros Mountains, saw an opportunity to invade. They raided Babylonian lands, destabilizing the empire even further. Samsu-Iluna fought to hold them back, but with his forces stretched thin, he could not stop the slow disintegration of Babylonian power. For decades, Babylon endured under weak rulers, but it was only a matter of time before a larger force would come to finish what the rebellions and Kassite invasions had started. That force was the Hittites. By 1595 BC, the once great empire of Hammurabi was a shadow of its former self. The cities that had once paid tribute to Babylon were now independent, trade routes had been lost, and the military was no longer strong enough to defend its borders. Then, the Hittites, a rising power from Anatolia, launched a devastating invasion. The Hittite army, equipped with advanced chariots and superior weaponry, swept through Mesopotamia with ruthless efficiency. Babylon, despite its once impenetrable walls, could not withstand their assault. The city fell, its treasures looted, its people slaughtered or enslaved. The great empire that Hammurabi had built was gone. But while the Hittites had conquered Babylon, they did not stay. Their campaign was a raid rather than a full-scale occupation. As they withdrew, the Kassites moved in, taking control of the ruined city and establishing a new dynasty. Under Kassite rule, Babylon slowly recovered. The Kassites rebuilt the city, restored trade routes, and even embraced many aspects of Babylonian culture, including Hammurabi's laws. Though the first Babylonian empire had fallen, its legal system endured. The Code of Hammurabi influenced later civilizations, from the Assyrians to the Persians, and even the Greeks and Romans. The idea that laws should be written, that justice should be consistent, and that society should be structured under a legal framework became a foundation for future governments. Even today, echoes of Hammurabi's principles can be found in modern legal systems. The concept of proportional justice, where punishments match the severity of crimes, originated in Hammurabi's code. The idea of contracts, property rights, and accountability in construction and trade can all be traced back to the laws he established. But Hammurabi's influence wasn't just legal, it was political and military as well. He demonstrated that an empire could be built not just through conquest, but through diplomacy, alliances, and governance. His ability to balance war with administration set a precedent for future rulers. Hammurabi was not just a conqueror, he was a visionary. He took a fragmented, war-torn region and turned it into a unified empire, proving that leadership required more than just military strength. His laws, his strategies, and his vision shaped history. Though Babylon would fall and rise again under different rulers, Hammurabi's legacy remained intact. He had built more than just an empire, he had built a system, a foundation upon which future civilizations would stand. And so, thousands of years later, his name is still remembered. His laws are still studied. His empire may have crumbled, but his impact on history is eternal. Hammurabi, the man who built Babylon and changed the world forever.